Welcome to the Always On podcast. I'm your host, Duncan MacPherson. On this podcast, our objective is to enable our audience, which are high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves, personally and professionally. And to that end, today we had a great conversation I did with Dr. Amy Dupree. Dr. Amy, as she is known, is the founder and president of LifeBridge Strategies. She's been working closely with financial professionals to provide added impact on working with their clients on the life side of retirement and how that can lead to referability, loyalty, added fee worthiness, and just to create a reputation of being the trusted advisor of choice. A great conversation. Amy's been working in this space for over 30 years. She has an unrivaled reputation and just a really enlightened outlook and philosophy on this approach, and it supplements a financial professional's deliverable dramatically. So if you like this podcast, please can share and tell your colleagues. And if you have any ideas for topics or themes down the road, just let us know. Thanks for listening. In my many years coaching and consulting with financial professionals, it makes sense that one of the most common goals that their clients have is to achieve financial independence, which ultimately means they have the ability to live off the income of their own resources. They can retire, they can have a work optional lifestyle, they pretty much are in the driver's seat. Money serves their life. And ultimately, and I've said this to my kids, you want to get to a goal where your money makes more money than you do. But it's easy to get really fixated on the quantitative, the numbers. And of course, that's important. But I learned a long time ago that it's not just how much we earn and what we're worth that matters. It's who we become and what financial independence makes of us, not just gets us, but makes of us and reveals in us. And it's for that reason I'm very excited to have this conversation with Dr. Amy Dupree, who has a very enlightened perspective on the life side of retirement. So first of all, Dr. Amy, thank you very much for being here on Always On.
Thanks, Duncan. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, and so let's talk about how you collaborate with financial professionals to make sure that the clients have as much emphasis on the qualitative side of financial independence and retirement, not just getting to their number.
Yeah, and as I heard you do that introduction, Duncan, I have to say, I've drunk your Kool-Aid because I believe everything you just said. And I have had the great pleasure of working alongside financial advisors for about 20 years. I started it as doing client speaking events, which I still do. But what I recognized in doing that and talking to clients was advisors needed some support in how to have these life conversations. And so I developed a program called Trusted Advisor of Choice. And what I love to work with advisors on is, how do you comfortably go to where the client is and be able to have that life conversation, whether it's about retirement or caregiving or the family side of estate planning or younger? We're very focused now on intergenerational conversations. And then express empathy with real authenticity and segue back to the business conversation. How do you do that with ease? So that's one thing I love to work with advisors on. And then in doing all that, what I realized was as they started having these life conversations with clients, they also wanted to have resources to offer the client on the life side. They said to me, it's a little bit like I've opened up a wound without a bandage. I've got financial solutions, but I want to do more than just empathy. And the newest offering we have coming out is called Life Map, and that's robust resources for clients that they can only get from their advisor on the life side. I like to partner with advisors in every way possible to help make that relationship with their clients more effective, more fun, and more beneficial for both the client and the advisor.
Okay, and there's a real art and science to that. Virtually every advisor I've worked with over the years has great intentions, a big heart. They really want to bring value that a client finds to be of value, but it can be a little tricky. So to combine intention and that authenticity with a process, a map, a blueprint that somebody can follow, just can maintain the authenticity and the purity of the intention, but just give it a little bit more predictability. But ultimately, as the world has shifted to advisory, as clients have moved further down the track based on demography and complexity of needs, especially in these last 5 years, the concept of what it means to be fee worthy, to really strengthen loyalty, to get out in front of evolving needs for constant engagement and empowerment. And then, of course, advocacy, that bedside manner, that impact on someone's life, not just their finances, is so incredibly profound. So I'd love for you to share some examples of how this has impacted a relationship, to strengthen it, to create advocacy, referability, and things like that. That'd be great.
And I love what you just said. And I think every advisor obviously wants to retain their clients, and they want to attract new clients that fit who they are as well. And I'll tell you, the biggest thing I see, Duncan, it's just what you said. Advisors feel compassion and empathy and care about their clients. I think the biggest gap is in whether they convey that effectively to their clients. We can feel things and sit there and be feeling lots of empathy for somebody we're talking to, and they don't get it if we don't convey it in a way that lands for them. I'll tell you a story. This is a story that made a big impact on me. It was an advisor who I knew who struggled with these conversations a little bit. When you think about it, and I'm sure your audience feels this, the reason people go into financial services is often because they really love working on the financial and on developing plans and on helping people create the financial life they want. And then now all of a sudden we've turned everything around and said, okay, but we also want you to really focus on people's lives. And so this woman was somebody I knew, and she really worked hard on getting to be more empathic, and she was in coaching sessions and my trusted advisor of choice. And she told me one day she had a client come in who she knew had just lost her daughter in her 20s. The daughter had died unexpectedly. And she said to me, what my natural instinct would have been prior to this would have been to have say to the woman, I'm sorry for your loss, and just continue on. And she said, instead, I just looked at her and I said, I'm so sorry to hear about your daughter. And if you'd like to talk about her, I'd love to hear about her. And the client spent that session telling stories about the daughter, and it's been very recently just passed. And the advisor said she just listened, and they talked about the daughter for the session. And she said, there would have been a time I would have thought that was time I lost. But she said that woman got home and sent her a note and said, no one asks me about my daughter because they're afraid it's going to upset me and that I'm going to cry and get upset. You gave me such a gift today. And she said the woman sent her a collage of pictures of her daughter and said, thank you so much for what you did today. And the woman said to me, I was afraid to go there in the past. And now I get that if you're just real and you respond to your clients like people, the benefit of this is unbelievable in what it does for business. And she and I talked about the fact, not only was that a client for life, but probably that woman was going to be a great referral source to this advisor. Now, that's a very dramatic story, but I think it's a great illustration.
And again, it's a great illustration. And if you think about cause and effect, if you just detach yourself from an expectation of any outcome and just immerse yourself in the purity of just being a good person, things generally pretty much fall into place and come together on the business side. But that's becoming such a massive void. Is, I have to tell you, way back when, this is probably 20 years ago, I had a similar interaction with an advisor who had a client that went through something awful. And I just said, perhaps a card and a copy of the book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
But yeah,
And it was just the way it all came together. I had been told about this book and I read a little bit of it, very moving and powerful. That was a eureka moment for that advisor because, to your point, they're generally good messengers, but they are lacking in the messaging. What do I say? How do I approach this? And if somebody just gives them a little bit of a playbook on that in terms of hearing you talk about that story, I just read over the weekend, I think it was Carl Jung who said that silence is such a powerful part of communication, is just giving somebody the opportunity to express how they feel and what's on their minds. And so I'm assuming as I get to know you better, and I've spent some time on your website, which, by the way, lifebridgestrategies.com, for everybody who wants to get to know Dr. Amy and the team and the solutions a little bit better. Amy, I've been saying to a lot of our clients recently, I've been encouraging, especially the more substantial teams, to establish somebody on the team who is the chief noticing officer. There's one thing to know what's going on in your client's life, but to actually notice and to respond to it and give somebody that responsibility, because again, demography, complexity, look at how many hats a financial advisor wears these days. Wow. How much a client tends to bare their soul as their life becomes busier, noisier. I'd love to hear more about what you have in terms of actual solutions that a financial professional could add into their repertoire and empower their team with.
I love that. So the new offering and coming out in April, it's brand spanking new, but it comes out of all the work we've been doing. So it's actually just a new compilation of it in LifeMap, where we love to give clients, and clients have really responded well to these. We call them client-facing tools. They're tools as they go through different transitions. So, if you take the transition of retirement and you think about all the myriad of things that happen on the emotional and family side of that clients could use a little support with. From Is It Time to Retire is one of our tools, which looks at all 21 reasons that people might retire. Some, we call them push reasons and pull reasons into retirement. And then looking at who they might need to talk to and what else they might consider besides retirement. Hey, Duncan, how many people retire when maybe they just needed a sabbatical or they needed to shift what they were doing? So we have things like that. And for every tool, there is a video from one of the 4 professionals who developed it, talking directly to the client about how to maximize the use of this tool. And we have things for retirement around making sure you can find fulfillment in retirement and have enough connection in your life, all the life side of things, right? Where are you going to live? Matter of fact, I just recorded a video about should you stay or should you go? I don't know whether you should stay in the house that you're in now. And this is, I have to tell you, Duncan, this is an area I'm really passionate about, because as you look at the later stages of retirement, we know that one of the things that most impacts people's quality of life is if they're not living in the place that suits where they are at that life stage. So I say that life transitions, which are the stages, changes, events people go through, have 4 implications: practical, emotional, family, and financial. And what we do is try to support the advisor so they can focus on their sweet spot, the financial, by giving them resources they can offer their clients on the practical, emotional, and family. So in addition to these tools, we have Ask the Expert sessions and life coaches available and things that create a full supportive picture for the advisor's client, where the advisor doesn't have to invest more time, but just has to offer this to their client.
That's very good. And I'm sure somebody could take a deep dive just to understand the lay of that land. It's interesting. I'm sensing, just again, based on demography, because a lot of financial advisors are getting up there. And
They are.
I've had so many conversations with advisors who have said, I think I just want to sell my business and get out and go write the great American novel or whatever it is they want to do. And I say to them, I said, do you really want to get out, or do you just want to balance out? Do you want to just balance your life a little bit? And I've had the conversation about a sabbatical, even just giving yourself permission and setting a goal to take a 6-month sabbatical in 18 months can force you to make some very important decisions about what you're investing your time in. And most financial advisors, when they really get into it, they realize that there's still a lot about what they do that they love. Yes. If they can just disassociate from the things that they don't love doing and allocate, automate, or even disassociate from some of that to liberate themselves to go into what they really enjoy doing, they don't need to get out. Now they've got balance, and they're arguably better equipped to have a meaningful relationship with their clients that are probably in many ways going through some of the same things.
When I do one of the client events I do, speaking events, is on retirement, reimagining retirement. And often it's the advisor who comes up to me after and says, that was great for me too, because what we talk about is just what you're saying. How do you balance out your life? And I'm all about how are you going to find fulfillment right to the day you die? And It's funny, Duncan, because people will often say to me at the reception after, when are you going to retire? They'll ask me. I'm 62. And I smile and I say, retire from a hobby I get paid for? Because I'm never had more fun than I'm having right now. And to me, that's the goal, right? So I look ahead and think, okay, I might shrink it down. I might do a little bit more of this or that. But I try to take my own advice on this because I think often people burn out because they don't balance out. And so I think advisors can benefit from a lot of these things as much as their clients, right? That
I'm seeing a module coming together here.
You gave me balance out. I've never thought of that. I like that term. So
you get burnout, get out, balance out. And then just with that, the restoration of just doing what you love to do. Because like you, the only thing about what I do when I have to travel, it's the airports and the airplanes that are getting a little tiresome.
Yes.
But the work itself has never been more rewarding.
If this podcast resonates with you, then you're likely the kind of advisor who strives to be indispensable to high net worth families. In partnership with Pareto Systems and the Institute for Preparing Heirs, we're offering exclusive live training to become the most trusted advisor for high net worth families. The Great Wealth Transfer Program equips you with the training and tools to secure and enhance multi-generational relationships. It's about becoming not just an advisor, but the most trusted advisor. Join us for the live training. Visit paretosystems.com/IPH to learn more and register today. Info can also be found in the description of this podcast. Again, that's paretosystems.com/IPH. Position yourself as the trusted advisor for generations to come.
Have you ever felt like you're alone on a desert island? You know, alone, with your challenges, and wishing you had a group of successful advisors to share ideas with, solve problems together, and push each other to reach bigger outcomes. Well, you don't have to be alone. Hi, I'm Scott Hamilton, a Pareto coach, and I also lead the mastermind groups for Pareto Systems. Our goal? To help advisors achieve bigger, better futures faster than they could on their own. Through our mastermind format, what we call collective genius, we bring together successful advisors to share best practices, insights, and solve problems together. Some of our groups also are focused on specific niches, like divorce or M&A. All groups are led by Pareto coaches who've worked with hundreds of top-tier financial advisors. Ready for more? Visit ParetoMastermind.com for details and to check out our upcoming webinars. That's ParetoMastermind.com. Bigger, better, faster.
And now what's interesting, and I'm having great conversations with advisors about this, is that there's such a fixation on AI. And I remind them, the beauty of AI is it's going to put a greater emphasis on what you really get paid to do, because AI will not have the EI, the emotional intelligence. And that's obviously in your wheelhouse. I got another quote for you, back to demography. So this is Victor Hugo, wrote one of my favorite novels of all time, right? Les Miserables.
Yeah.
Just an amazing story on so many levels. But he said, 40 is the old age of youth. 50 is the youth of old age.
That's great.
It's so good. And so I think what you're talking about, especially because I know you've written some books, the whole concept of surviving to thriving, it starts with a mindset. We're lucky that if we get a little bit of runway here in terms of our longevity, we can have a second or third act. And I'm sure there's a rejuvenational quality that comes from some of the things you do with advisors to help clients not have the climax that comes with retirement or a liquidity event, but saying, okay, what's next? Where do I go from here?
And you're right. And to me, what I like to do is look at, talk about retirement in 3 chapters. And there's nothing magical about these 3 chapters. It just gets people beyond thinking of retirement as one long vacation. Right? So we know that if people plan for retirement on the life side, it's usually the early stage of retirement, right? And it's like taking the lid off. We finally get to do all those things we wished we'd had time for. I understand you're a pickleball player, so maybe more pickleball, whatever it might be. It's the travel, it's the golf, the pickleball, all that stuff. But then after a little while, as we move, and for some people this is quick and some it takes 2 or 3, 4 years, then it's a little bit for a lot of people of what's next. And how do I continue to have a sense of purpose in my life? And what does that look like? And the thing about the last third, the third of our life, is we're really not taught how to plan for that. We know how to do it early life. We do 5-year plans and it's all part of the ether around us, what we breathe, and people just know to plan. But people don't think to plan about the third. And so I'm all about getting clients to plan and advisors to plan for themselves, because where we see a dip is often in that middle stage of retirement, a dip in fulfillment, because it is the what now, and it's, okay, is this all there is? And we see an uprising of depression and anxiety, and a third of older adults who drink abusively didn't start doing so in retirement. And to your point, all of the advice that's good for clients is good for the advisors, because there are so many advisors at this same life stage. So thinking about what gives your life a sense of purpose and meaning now, and then looking at how you're going to expand that. And if you get down to more of a values level on this, it can really help. One of the things I did years ago is think about, what is it for me that makes my life worth living? Just asking ourselves that question. And I came up with sort of 4 things. I said, for me, it's all about contribution. I have to feel like I'm contributing. It looks different at different times, but I got to be contributing. Connection. I'm very connected. I have a lot of deep relationships. A sense of lifelong learning, and fun. So those 4 things for me are what make my life worth living. Now, how I get those 4 things today is different than how I'm going to get them at 80. But once you know what those things are, then you can say, okay, how do I get that sense of lifelong learning? How do I get that sense of fun? So I took a trip to the Greek Isles last summer, and one of the islands I was on was pretty rugged, and we had to walk a long way up and down to the beach, up this very kind of rocky, unstable walk. I thought, okay, I can do that at 62. Probably I'm not going to do that at 82. But maybe I do a cruise if I wanted to go back to the Greek Isles at 82, right? Might be a different sort of way to have that sense of fun. So I think as advisors are thinking about this for themselves and their clients, these are the conversations that you can have that are just human conversations that help clients think about it differently. One thing I teach is how to ask questions differently. And one of the ways to ask questions is to add more specificity. This advisor was using this client. This is not what are you going to do in retirement, but what are the three most important things to you do in retirement? And he said one client looked at him and said, that's a really good question. I thought of two things. I know we want to travel and I want to golf more, but I can't think of a third. And as we're talking, what I'm realizing is I'm not sure I have enough to do in retirement as I look forward. And so he said, I'm going to go home and talk to my wife about this because this is now a different way to think about it. So he saw the guy the next time and he said, that sparked all these conversations for us that we didn't really have a life planned. We just had a couple activities planned, and that's not a life in retirement. Now, again, imagine what that did for the relationship with that advisor and the client, right? That's about making yourself more referable and making you stickier with your clients.
And I have to think that it activates a level of reciprocity that it's one thing to point to a statement of investment performance and be proud of that. It's another thing to deepen a relationship where the reciprocity is a different energy. It's more future pacing. There's more energy to it. So if you can combine the both of being a great steward of someone's wealth and their life, you're probably going to make yourself indispensable. I do need to say a couple of things. First of all, yes, I do like pickleball. The only thing that annoys me about pickleball is the name. I just wish it had a more rugged, like, why can't it be called Stormball or Special Forces SEAL Team Ball or something? I just wish somebody thought that through a little bit better, but it's still a great game. This is what I want to ask you is being proactive from a planning perspective, adding this into the planning deliverable, it's got to activate, like you were talking about the mindset and that gentleman going back to his wife and having these conversations, it probably activates the realization around the whole vitality that has to come with this as well. Because when you talk about going to the Greek islands and 62, 82, I just saw a video of Gary Player, golf professional, running on a treadmill at 80 years old. And he runs better than I do. And I'm like, okay, so it's almost like Roger Bannister in breaking the 4-minute mile. It's okay, right. It's doable. So I think there's a mindset that gets activated when you plan it and are mindful of the vitality component, giving somebody the gift of just, hey, you can't be complacent. You got to keep stirring the pot. You got to keep moving and strengthening and balance and being limber, like all of these different things. These are qualitative nudges, I think, that are very profound.
I went to a workshop once where they asked us at the beginning to think, what year did we think how old did we think we were going to be when we died? And that's a startling question when you get asked that. And then the leader of the workshop said, what I'd like you to do now is think about your life going to your 105. And if you think about that, how does that change how you live today and how you conceive your future? And when you think about 105, sitting here talking to you today, I'm thinking, hey, I have 43 more years. That feels really different than how a lot of people start entering these years. It's a great question to ask your clients, right? What if you changed to thinking that you're going to live to be 105? We know some people are going to do that. And people's fear always is they're going to spend a long time sick. And actually, we know that people really tend not to spend a lot of years really sick or disabled, right? And it happens to some people, but it's not the typical. And the older we live to be, we have what's called a period of compressed morbidity. So it means we're less likely, if we live to be 95, we're probably not going to at 95 end up very disabled for 10 more years. We're probably going to go fairly quickly at that stage. That's the compressed morbidity part. So,
gotcha.
It changes how we think about things. We start to think about the vitality piece and how do we stay vital?
I read a while back that the essence of Zen is you could live to be 100 or it could all be over tomorrow.
Yeah.
So live your life accordingly, which I think is a great perspective around take nothing for granted, have immense gratitude, but plan accordingly. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's funny, a financial advisor will often talk to a client about not outliving your money. If you went to 105, okay, you need your money to be productive for 43
Yes.
years or whatever the case may be, if you're retired, of course. But then, of course, what about the other side? Making
Right.
sure that it is a fulfilling, because again, I read that 200 years ago, the average lifespan was 40.
Yeah.
So here we are. It is incredible. And
Like, it's mind boggling to think of that. I think,
oh yeah.
but you're right. And I do.
Running
I love
water
what-
and yeah.
I love what you said about because I actually have lost people early in my life, some people. And I do have a little bit of that perspective is it could go on to 105 or could be over tomorrow. And if you can somehow balance that and stay vital and still keep thinking, I'm going to shoot for the 105 and healthy and plan in case I don't have that opportunity. So
And I think that's just good karma, good energy, that we're not entitled to anything. It's all a bonus once you get to a certain point. And I got to tell you something, just yesterday, my wife found a program, one of those little mini series, and I'd never heard of it before. It's called Adolescence. And so we watched the first episode and it was like, okay, this is heavy. And I think it was 6 or 7 episodes, and it is beyond heavy. It is heartbreaking about stories about parenting and child rearing and just the pressures of being a human, let alone a teenager, and just all the potential unintended consequences that can come from that. It was unbelievable how, and I'm getting a little older, I'm getting a little more sentimental in life and emotional, and I don't know. I think some people, they harden as they get older. And for me, I'm just turning into an absolute mush ball of emotion. I'm not sure why that is, but I think I guess my point is just to be that trusted advisor that you speak so well about. It's not just, you're not just advising on their money. It's what the money can do for them and what the options are and what to be mindful of. I think it's just such a powerful unmet need. And what's that old saying about it's not how you make them think, it's how you make them feel.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a very powerful law in life that I learned a long time ago called the law of resonance. In the law of resonance, like if you study like Nikola Tesla and vibration and energy, like the law of resonance in communication is that the value of what you communicate begins at the end of the conversation. What are they thinking and feeling a day later, a week later, a month later? I have to think that this leaves an imprint that is indelible on people's lives. If it's approached with a process, not just random, but just like being methodical about it, I've got to think.
I think you're absolutely right. And the process that I teach that's embedded in trusted advisors called LYRA, and it's listen, empathize, reassure, act. And the listen at level 3. And level 3 is not just listening to the content, but listening to how the person likely feels, what's going on. She's qualitatively quite different. I can give you an example of that. So you listen and then empathize. And empathy, as I define it, is really just conveying to the person, I see you, I hear you, and I understand you. That's all it is. It's making sure that person really gets that you understand them. And then reassure is normalizing if it needs to happen, reassuring people they're not alone. But here's where the process for the advisor is so beneficial, because then it's just a segue back to the business conversation. And the segue should be something pretty natural. So if somebody's talking with you and they're going through a divorce and they're expressing how they're going through some tough times, you might say, Jill, I really hear this is really a tough time for you. And I'm so sorry you're having to deal with all this. I'm so sorry you're having to deal with this, or, oh, wow, you've got so much going on right now. Those are natural ways to express empathy. Empathy is short, right? Best done short. But then you can say something like, as I'm listening to you and we're talking, what's coming to me are some of the financial things we should probably take a look at. And what I'm hoping is if we look at that together, that frees you up to deal with all those other things you have to deal with. So now you bring conversation to the business in a way that isn't a jump start. It's just, and you can do this naturally at any point. You can come in, express empathy and say, okay, now what I'm thinking about is there's some financial implications here. If we look at them together, it's that partnering thing. I'm hoping what that does is free you up. Time, energy, so that you're not having to worry about this and you can deal with all of that. How does that sound to you? Because what I found one of advisors' biggest fears is if I go down this, I'm going to get down a rabbit hole I can't get out of. Now we're talking about Jill's divorce and suddenly I'm hearing about everything and I don't know how to stop that. Now, the truth is Jill's probably not going to do that. I think that fear is overblown a lot of times, that we think clients are going to treat us like therapists. Clients know you're not their therapist too. But advisors always say to me, I'm not a therapist. And I say, you don't have to be, you just have to be a connected human being. And a connected human being just listens, and then you can do your job. And Jill feels, wow, he or she really listened to me. They got me, and they're on my side. And that's what you want your client to walk away with, I think, is that feeling.
So Lyra, sorry, what was the A in Lyra?
Listen, empathize, reassure, act. And the act is the business conversation. So the act, there's an act. You're now going to act. Yeah. And what's your act part? So
I spelled Lyra wrong. I've been studying currency all my adult life. So I went right to Lyra, but nice connection. Okay. What's interesting, and I know people mean no harm, but it's so common to have like the knee-jerk reaction advice or consoling. Oh, everything happens for a reason. And whatever, what doesn't kill you, make you stronger. And
that's called cheerleading. I call that
cheerleading. Okay. Yeah. So
and you can cheerlead, but you have to do empathy before you cheerlead, or people feel that they feel discounted. They feel like you didn't really hear them.
It sounds like maybe you're just trying to park that and shelve it over here so you can focus on something else. And I think you have to demonstrate, like you're saying, that you're honoring the energy, the reality of what it is they're going through. But I do like that segue, very gentle, respectful, natural, practical segue to the action, because ultimately at the end of the day, some action has to be taken based on this critical life event, this moment of truth in someone's life. So again, it's the art and science. It's the bedside manner with the technical ability working together. So you put that together hand in glove for advisors to adopt and deploy within the team, which I'm sure just amplifies the quality of the relationships.
Totally. And the whole team can learn this. If you're an advisor who's got, client-facing staff, they can all get good at this, because everybody who interacts with your client should be good at this, really. They should be able to be present with your client when your client needs them to be.
I just have to imagine Bonnie Raitt had a great song. It was "Give Them Something to Talk About."
Yes.
I'll never forget, a financial advisor developed a really meaningful relationship with a client. And he said this client in the early days, all of his money was in his business. He had very little money invested with me, but I always knew there was some upside, there was some promise. But in the meantime, a really great guy and a great family and some great introductions. Like his circle was meaningful. So anyway, not a AAA client by any stretch, but over the years, a little bit of traction and momentum. And then the client sold the business for a big number. And the advisor said to his wife, we should have a retirement party. And I'd like to basically provide the venue and provide some things to celebrate your achievement. And wife was all over it. And it was a great party. And the client, at the moment of truth and celebration, gets the microphone and just says to the group assembled, he goes, you all in this room need to know something. Then none of this happens without him.
Wow.
And he points to the advisor, and the advisor told me, he said, I didn't expect that. I didn't even hope for that. I just wanted to celebrate, but you can imagine what that did within the family tree and that inner circle. So I have to imagine there has to be examples where if you play the long game and
Yeah.
you're sincere, that you're going to give clients something to talk about that's going to lead to those introductions.
You're making me think of one of the things that, of course, every advisor wants is to meet the adult kids of their clients for some intergenerational wealth transfer. And oftentimes advisors will think the best time to do that is when doing estate planning. But I always say the best time to do it is when you're talking to your clients about longevity and caregiving, because you can bring those adult kids in at a time when there's no benefit except a relationship benefit. So I'll give you an example of somebody I know actually had this happen where they got brought into, their dad had grown more ill and the mom said, come with me to the advisor to meet the advisor. And the daughter, who's my age, said, I went in and I watched how this advisor was with my mother. And I thought, that's the person I want to work with. This done well, and you can say to Gen 1, if there were ever a time you might need care, likely I'd be interacting with your adult kids. And it would be great if we got to meet each other when things are going well. Just for no other reason that they know me and they know what I can do and they have a face to go with the name. And if it never needs to happen, that's fine. But that way it's set up that way. What would you think about that? And in teaching advisors that, I've heard so many great stories about, I know one woman who said she now is just building her practice by really focusing in on doing this. And the thing is, when those kids come in, you're not trying to sell them anything. You're not trying to tell them how great you are. You're just telling them how you're going to help their parents. And if you do that with real sincerity, when people feel that, right? They feel that authenticity. That's what that daughter felt. And I thought, I think that's just a brilliant way, and to move it away from estate planning where then it's about who's getting what and how much can I tell my kids. And it's a little different conversation.
That's a level of comfort and energy that's not just this sterile, let's deal with the numbers and the science. Let's deal. It's interesting. I know many advisors that they provided a client family with a life in a book, or
yes,
the parameters around a legacy drawer, or the family box, or the vault, the safe. Any of these little tangible items where all these essential things go, and password wallets and just really important things. And then the enlightened advisor will say, I want to establish a relationship with the kids before they get their own advisors. So when they get accepted to a school or graduate school or have a meaningful birthday or whatever, just celebrate that. It's interesting. A client of ours, this goes back a while, but very good client of an advisor. The son struggled through university, stopped and started, and what should have taken 4 years took 6 or 7. And the dad was making light of that to the advisor, but the advisor pounced on it and said, wow, it would have been a lot easier to give up and quit than to see it through. So I'm really proud of him. Anyway, he ended up sending the kid a silver coin, a card, and a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, and just said, this is the only book, congratulations, and very happy for it. Anyway, it had a huge impact on the kid to get something tangible.
Yes.
Huge impact on the dad, not to trivialize the accomplishment, and the relationship overall strengthened. So I'm not saying get in the gift-giving business, but there are moments of truth that have nothing to do with investment performance or fulfilling a need. It's about the emotional intelligence and the relationship management. So I love all this. So if somebody wants to get to know you better, Amy, so lifebridgestrategies.com. Do you have any resources maybe that we could make available so somebody could ease in and just consume some of your philosophy and your approach?
One of the things you just mentioned that is on my website, and that's a tangible thing. I have these cards that are called caring cards, and they're just intergenerational conversation. That's something if people want something that they can just keep on their desk. I know advisors who sometimes keep these cards on their desk and use the questions with clients, which is an interesting way to do it, versus just giving it to clients. And those same questions are in the Life Memories book that people said to me, we want to write the answers down. So we did that. So those are a couple of things. If people are interested, they can certainly take a look at, and look at some of the resources that we have on the site, and happy to talk to anybody if they have questions. One of the things I'm really passionate about, Duncan, is helping advisors, first of all, have more fun in their business, but the whole issue we have about how do you better connect with women. And I think, to me, what sometimes amuses me about this is I think it's pretty easy. I think somehow we've made this so hard. What it is just making sure we have meetings meet the needs of women and that we have the connection. So if whether the woman's the CFO in the family or she is not engaged in the money at all, likely she's engaged in the life side of the family. So the more you connect life and money, and I always say life and money go hand in hand, the more you can do that, the more women are going to want to be at the meetings because they have relevance for them. If the meeting is strictly a portfolio review and that's it, it may be, for some women, that's going to resonate. But if you have women in your book of business that you don't have a good relationship with or a strong relationship with, I think the way to do it is to look at her life stage, look at the couple's life stage, figure out, I love what you did. I thought when you told that story about giving that book and the silver coin, I thought, I bet that mom went, wow, that's amazing. I don't want to stereotype that all women are running the family life and the men aren't, because men are very engaged in family life, but you have to make it relevant. And I think that's when we look at that, we're still using the stat 70 to 80% of the time women leave their advisor within the first year after their husband dies. It's only because they don't have a relationship, and so they go with somebody else who has a relationship. So I always say you want to look at your book of business and start there and say, who don't I have relationships with, and how do I do that authentically? It all comes down to being authentic. It has to be authentically done or people feel it.
My soundbite there is just, because you're right, everybody's different, notwithstanding the gender distinctions, but everyone's different. And my soundbite is just be interested. You don't have to try to be interesting. You just be interested in the person, understand what makes them tick, ask great questions.
Yes.
Don't let it go to your head to die. Like, actually take that information they give you as IP, capture it, organize it, archive it, invest it into the rest of the relationship. You'll be more interesting. So
I love that. Be interested, not interesting. See, you're giving me all sorts of great sound bites.
It's a two-way street here. It's going on both ways. Listen, Amy, I love what you do, but I think I'm having a deeper appreciation for what this does. And it's bordering on now a point of being non-optional, that an enlightened team has to get really serious and deliberate about embracing this into their process and their approach. You think about how much money's changing hands in the next 10 years, but also the family dynamics, the relationship management is going to become more complex, and this is going to impact fee worthiness, let alone all the other benefits that come from this type of approach. So again, lifebridgestrategies.com. Check out, so you speak at conferences,
I do. I
got
speak
resources.
at
Okay.
I do lots of speaking for advisors. So if somebody wants me to come out and interested, I'm happy to talk to them about that as well.
Okay. So, and all of that can be found on LifeBridge Strategies. So
Yes,
you've got speaking, you've got some consulting, you've got some intellectual property in the form of self-guided resources. So everybody check out lifebridgestrategies.com. And Amy, let's do this again, and let's bring some more stories into how this has actually had a meaningful impact on someone's business and their relationships.
Do you have time for one more story, Duncan, or are we?
Absolutely.
We mentioned listening at level 3. So I just want to share a story about the difference between level 2 and level 3. I was with this advisor who had a great relationship with this client. I was in the room during this event. I was doing coaching with her, and she started the meeting with the client. Clearly, they knew each other well. The woman was a 72-year-old retired physician, didn't bring her husband to this meeting, but the advisor knew the husband and the kids. And so the meeting went along beautifully. They did a portfolio review. They did some planning. And then towards the end of the meeting, I felt the advisor's energy shift. The meeting had gone a little long, and she was closing things up. And at that moment, the client said, I'm going to Italy to see my mother. And the advisor responded at level 2, which is content. And she said, that's great. Have a wonderful time. When you get back, let's get together. Now, remember, this woman was 72 years old. So my first thought was, how old's her mother? And she didn't in any excited way say this. It was a flat affect. And so I said, how's your mom doing? And the woman dropped her head a little bit and said, she's not doing very well. She has dementia, and I'm not sure she's going to recognize me. And I'm guessing this may be the last time I see my mother. And I just said, I am so sorry. I can't imagine how tough this trip is. She said, it's one of the hardest things I've done. And the advisor missed that connection because she left the room emotionally. So level 2 and level 3 are very different. And can't listen at level 3 all the time because it requires us to be very present and focused. But when you listen at level 3, you're listening for what the person's experiencing. And that's very different than just the content. And that's where the magic is in the connection with your client.
That's a great story. And I love that distinction between level 2 and level 3. What we need to do is we need to create a Dr. Amy hologram so you can be in the room virtually to pick up on these little nuances and just make sure they don't fade, because that is very powerful. And that's a very impactful energy there too. This is great. We'll have to do this again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, lifebridgestrategies.com. I've had many people, including somebody on my staff who's worked with you over the years. We speak very highly of you. So I think everybody can get a sense for your style and approach here. So I really appreciate your time, and we'll have you back.
Thanks, Duncan.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.